It had just rained at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey, and the ground was wet. Teterboro wasn't just an airport. It was a statement. There were no commercial airlines. There was no TSA security theater. It was simply a playground for the ultra-wealthy, where Wall Street giants chose to bypass the demeaning aspects of ordinary travel. At the far end of the private terminal sat a Bombardier Global 7500, gleaming even at night. The aircraft was painted a matte midnight blue that appeared almost black against the night sky, its sleek profile reflecting both speed and power. Its tail number, N717ZM, was whispered about in aviation circles that tracked such things. It was incredible. The $73 million Global 7500 was one of the fastest and most luxurious ultra-long-range jets available, capable of flying from New York to Tokyo without refueling, with a range exceeding 7,700 nautical miles. Inside the cockpit, Captain Derek Lawson was reviewing the pre-flight checklist. Derek was a man of the old school, 54 years old, with silver hair combed back in military-style discipline, a jawline that looked like it was carved from granite, and an ego to match his expensive watch. He had flown in the Navy, then in commercial airlines, and finally rose to what he considered the pinnacle of aviation, private charter flights for the top 0.01%. His co-pilot, Lucas Chen, said, "Fuel load approved, Captain." Lucas was younger, 31 years old, with a kind of nervous energy, constantly trying to prove he deserved to sit in the right seat of a $73 million aircraft. Everything was proceeding quite normally, as if nothing was about to happen. Derek grunted in agreement and turned the buttons on the overhead panel with experienced efficiency. "Good, we need to take off in 40 minutes. The customer is Ashley Hartford. Her father owns Hartford Media Group." Lucas, unable to hide his admiration, asked, "That Ashley Hartford?" He added, "The influencer?" "Influencer. Heiress, professional pain in the ass," Derek replied dismissively. "She has 500,000 Instagram followers who watch her complain about the temperature of her champagne. She's a real handful. If the cabin isn't exactly 20 degrees, we'll hear about it constantly as we cross the Atlantic." Derek was well aware of everything. Lucas nodded and took notes on his tablet. Derek scanned the rainy tarmac through the cockpit window. A black limousine was approaching the front of the terminal. It must be Hartford and his team, but something else caught his attention. Parked next to the plane's stairs, among Teterboro's fleet of luxury vehicles serving its customers, was an old shared sedan that seemed completely out of place. The back door opened and a woman stepped out. She was black, probably in her early 30s, but her tired eyes made her look older. She wore a large gray hooded sweatshirt that had clearly seen better days, black leggings and white sneakers with worn-out toes. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and she carried a simple bag, not the luxury handbag Derek was accustomed to. Derek's brow furrowed even more. "Who is this?" Derek muttered. Lucas craned his neck to look. "Maybe a catering attendant? Or a last-minute cleaning crew member?" he replied. Derek's voice sharpened with irritation. "No uniform? And she's going up the stairs." "Unacceptable," he said. This was a $73 million machine, not a public bus. Derek took great pride in the exclusivity of his aircraft. He did not tolerate disorder, and he certainly did not tolerate people leaving the mall food court and boarding his plane. Derek unbuckled his seatbelt and said, "Stay here, I'll take care of it. This isn't a charity." He moved toward the exit. Derek stepped out of the cockpit, adjusted his tie, and straightened his captain's jacket. He strode purposefully toward the galley. Flight attendant Emma Rodriguez was arranging crystal glasses on a silver tray. She looked up as Derek passed, her dark eyes questioning. Derek asked, almost commanding, "Emma, did you let a visitor on?" Emma looked confused. "No, Captain. The passenger list only includes Mrs. Hartford and her assistant." "No one else," she replied. "Exactly." Derek clenched his jaw. "Be careful. There's a security issue." He pushed open the galley curtain and entered the main cabin. The interior of the Bombardier Global 7500 was breathtaking. And there, in the front seat, the club seat facing forward, always reserved for the person who paid the charter fee, sat the hooded woman. She was comfortably settled, her bag placed on the immaculate carpet beside her feet. She was looking out the window, watching the raindrops run down the glass, and appeared completely at peace. Derek felt the vein in his temple begin to throb. The disrespect was blatant. He cleared his throat. "Excuse me," Derek said, his voice dripping with humility to immediately establish hierarchy. The woman turned. Her eyes were dark, intelligent, and surprisingly calm. There was no fear. There was no shame at being caught in a place she didn't belong. "Hello," she said simply, her voice soft but clear. "You're in the wrong place," Derek said, disregarding the rules of politeness. He stood over her, his 6'2" frame trying to intimidate her. "The cleaning crew enters through the back service door, and you are definitely not supposed to be sitting on the cabin upholstery," he said, trying to belittle her, but he was completely unaware of what was about to happen. With barely concealed impatience, he gestured toward the exit. "Get up," he said. The woman blinked, a slight smile appearing at the corners of her mouth. "I'm not from the cleaning crew, Captain," she replied. "What would your reaction be if someone came up to you like this, told you to get up and pointed to the door. She deliberately read his name tag. Captain Lawson, my name is Zara. I'm on the passenger list, she said. Derek let out a short, incredible laugh that echoed in the luxury cabin. Passenger list. He shook his head as if explaining basic arithmetic to a child. On the passenger list for this flight is Ashley Hartford, daughter of Edward Hartford, owner of one of North America's largest media companies, he replied. He waved his hand vaguely toward the woman's clothing with a dismissive gesture. Whatever that is, she's not here. I was at it an hour ago, Zara said softly, her hands resting calmly on the armrests. Please check your iPad, she continued. I don't need to check anything to know you're not part of Global 7500, Derek said sarcastically. This is a private charter flight, not a Spirit Airlines connection. You're trespassing on private property, he said, trying to justify himself. His intention was very clear. Zara shifted slightly in her seat, remaining relaxed despite his aggressive attitude. I assure you, Captain, I'm not trespassing. I need to get to London tonight. It's an emergency, she said, actually trying to calm the situation. What's urgent, Derek replied, raising his voice, is that I maintain the standards of this aircraft. This cabin is reserved for customers who pay $150,000 for a transatlantic flight. Now take your bag and leave before I call security and have you removed from the plane. Zara's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. The softness in her eyes disappeared, replaced by a firmness that Derek, in his arrogance, failed to recognize as authority. Zara quietly said, My advice to you, and tried to calm the situation by hinting at what might happen, is to double-check the passenger list, Captain Lawson, before you make an irreversible mistake. But the captain was determined. The tension inside the cabin had become suffocating. Emma stood tensely by the galley entrance, clutching her silver tray, sensing that something was very wrong, but Derek's anger prevented her from intervening. Just as Derek was about to give another dismissive reply, the sound of high heels striking the metal stairs echoed through the open aircraft door. God, this weather is awful, came a shrill voice. Why haven't we taken off yet, she asked. Now everything was about to come together. Ashley Hartford entered the cabin like a force of nature, wrapped in designer labels and privileges. She wore a pink Burberry trench coat, large sunglasses despite it being nighttime, and had a tired-looking assistant struggling with 3 large designer suitcases behind her. Ashley suddenly stopped when she saw Zara sitting in the best window seat. She slowly lowered her sunglasses, her eyes narrowing in disgust. Ashley said in a tone sharp enough to cut through glass. Captain, she asked clearly, why is there a person sitting in my seat? Derek's entire demeanor changed instantly. The aggressive bully turned into a fawning servant. He flashed Ashley a charming, practiced smile. Miss Hartford, welcome aboard our flight. I sincerely apologize. We were dealing with a minor security breach. He shot Zara a stern look. This person was just leaving, he said. Ashley wrinkled her nose and looked at Zara's worn sneakers with the kind of disgust she usually felt when she found something dead in her closet. Did she touch anything? Ashley asked. If it's contaminated, I don't want to sit there, she asked. Zara remained seated, with an almost supernatural calm. I'm not a security breach, she said, her voice raised just enough to cut through Ashley's dramatic tone. I'm flying to London, just like you, she replied. Ashley let out a loud, mocking laugh that filled the cabin. You? Flying on a private jet? She looked around as if searching for hidden cameras. Did you win some kind of charity raffle? Or are you a nanny? Where are the kids? Please tell me there are no screaming children on this plane, she said, using every discriminatory, demeaning word in her ego-driven arsenal. But she was still unaware of what was about to happen. There are no children, Zara said calmly. It's just me. Derek stepped forward, his already limited patience completely exhausted. He couldn't allow Ashley Hartford, one of Apex Aviation's most valuable customers, to be disturbed by this stowaway. Listen to me, Derek said, leaning in close to Zara's face, deliberately invading her personal space with aggressive intent. I don't know who let you on the plane or what system error it was, but this is a plane Miss Hartford chartered privately. You're ruining the aesthetics and the experience, he said. He stood up straight and used his commanding voice. Now go, he added to his speech. Zara looked at him, her dark eyes unreadable. Where should I go, she asked. Ideally back to the tarmac, Derek said coldly. But if you insist on this delusion that you're flying with us, he gestured toward the back of the cabin. You can sit in the jump seat, in the galley, behind the curtain, somewhere no one will see you. The jump seat, a small, uncomfortable, foldable chair used by the crew during takeoff and landing, cramped, hard, and utterly degrading for a passenger. Zara looked at the luxurious cream-colored leather seat she was currently sitting in, then at the hard kitchen jump seat visible behind the curtain. She looked at Ashley, who was impatiently tapping her designer high heels on the floor. She looked at Derek, who seemed ready to physically remove her from there. From me, Zara said flatly. You want me to sit in the maid's room? She asked clearly. It suits your wardrobe, Ashley interjected in a bright voice, already pulling out her phone to document her fabulous journey for her followers. Derek picked up Zara's bag from the floor and threw it into the hallway with deliberate disrespect. You heard, Miss Hartford, Derek said, his voice carrying the certainty of authority. Move. Now. Or I'll call airport security and report you as a threat to flight safety. Leaning closer, he lowered his voice to a threatening whisper. Do you know what happens to people like you when Homeland Security gets involved? You'll be on the no-fly list for the rest of your life, he said. His goal was to scare Zara into sitting down in the seat he had shown her. This was a despicable blow, based entirely on lies, a direct threat to her freedom. Zara slowly stood up. She was tall, taller than she had appeared sitting down, almost as tall as Derek. With deliberate calm, she smoothed the front of her hooded sweatshirt. For a moment, Derek thought he saw a dangerous glint in her eyes. It wasn't fear. It wasn't submission. It was cold, calculated anger, perfectly controlled. All right, Zara said quietly. I'll move. Derek smirked with the triumphant feeling of having someone in their place. A wise choice, he said. Zara picked up her bag. She didn't look at Ashley, who had already taken the seat and was pulling out antibacterial wipes to disinfect the armrests. Zara walked to the back of the cabin, past the luxurious sofas and the dining table that could seat 6, and sat down on the small, hard jump seat next to the kitchen wall. This was unbelievable. How could she accept it? But she had a plan too. Emma looked at Zara with obvious sympathy, an apologetic expression in her eyes. Would you like some water? Emma whispered. Zara read the name tag and said, No thank you, Emma. Her voice was calm, almost serene. Fasten your seatbelt. It's going to be an interesting flight, she said. As the Bombardier began taxiing down the runway, the cabin atmosphere split into two separate worlds. In the main cabin, Ashley Hartford was laughing loudly in a video call, complaining to her 500,000 followers about the humidity and drinking sparkling apple wine, which she loudly declared adequate but not extraordinary. In the galley, Zara sat in the hard jump seat, her knees nearly touching the galley partition wall. The engine noise was louder here, unfiltered by the cabin's noise-canceling technology. Derek's voice rang out smoothly and professionally over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been cleared for takeoff. Our next stop is London Luton. The flight time is 5 hours and 45 minutes. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey. The atmosphere was as if nothing had just happened. Zara pulled a phone from the pocket of her hooded jacket. This was not a cracked iPhone or a cheap Android. It was a sleek, logo-less prototype in matte black, not yet on the market. Such devices would not reach the consumer market for another 2 years. She unlocked it with biometric scanning and typed a single message, confirm code BLACK01. Initiate immediate inspection of asset N717ZM. Personnel file, Lawson Derek. Priority Alpha. She pressed send. The Bombardier's twin Rolls-Royce Pearl 700 engines roared to full power, shoving Zara against the uncomfortable wall behind her. But she didn't move, because she knew her limits. She just wanted to see everything. She simply closed her eyes and waited. Because Derek Lawson had made the most expensive mistake of his life. And about 47 minutes later, when the satellite link reached the operations center, he would discover exactly whose plane he thought he was protecting. When the Bombardier Global 750 Wondered reached its cruising altitude of 45,000 feet, the seatbelt sign chimed softly and pleasantly. The plane settled into level flight, the engines settling into a steady, powerful hum. Derek Lawson emerged from the cockpit looking pleased with himself. He had handled the situation professionally, he thought. Maintained standards, protected the paying customer, eliminated an unwanted element. That was what separated elite private aviation from the chaos of commercial flights. He entered the main cabin to check on Ashley Hartford, the real VIP, the truly important person. Is everything to your liking, Miss Hartford? Derek asked, leaning back comfortably against the partition with his usual charm. Ashley was stretched out on the club seat, her pink trench coat carelessly thrown on the opposite divan, recording herself on her phone. Sparkling apple cider is fine, Ashley said, putting down her phone, but to be honest, this place smells weird. She gestured vaguely toward the kitchen, like poverty or something. Can we close that curtain? I don't want to see it. Derek laughed, his voice containing just enough sycophancy to make Emma flinch from the kitchen. Sure thing, Derek said. He reached out and pulled the heavy curtain aside sharply, separating Zara and Emma from the main cabin. He turned to Ashley. I hear your father is expanding Hartford Media's digital infrastructure, he said. My dad always buys things, Ashley said, examining her manicure with boredom. Actually, he was talking about upgrading our private jet fleet, maybe something bigger than this. Don't get me wrong, this is very cute, but it's a bit cramped for international travel. Derek's professional pride was slightly wounded. The Global 7500 is Bombardier's flagship, top of the line. If you want bigger, you're talking commercial wide-body aircraft, he replied. Or, Ashley said, her interest piqued, my dad could buy his own fleet. He mentioned buying an aviation company. Who owns Apex? Derek poured himself a coffee and joined the conversation. It used to be owned by Gerald Hendricks, an old Silicon Valley rich guy. But he sold the company 3 days ago. A private sale, very secretive. No one knows who the new buyer is yet. In fact, she would find out who it was shortly. What would you do if you were in Derek's shoes? Probably some boring hedge fund, Ashley said dismissively. Most likely, Derek said. Whoever it is, they need to tighten up the security protocols. The woman in the back, he pointed to the closed curtain. She was a complete disaster. I'm putting her on the blacklist when we land. She won't be flying with Apex again. Ashley smiled and took another sip of her sparkling apple cider. Good, we can't let everyone think they can afford this lifestyle. Behind the curtain, in the cramped kitchen area, Zara sat on the jump seat, holding her prototype phone. Emma pretended to organize the beverage cart, but her eyes kept darting to Zara with a look of sympathy and curiosity. I'm really sorry about this, Emma whispered in her Puerto Rican accent. Captain Lawson, he sometimes, she continued. However, Zara gently finished. Arrogant? Prejudiced? A bully who confuses cruelty with professionalism, she added. Emma widened her eyes at this direct assessment, but nodded. I wanted to say something, but you'd lose your job, Zara finished. I understand, Emma. It's not your fault, she said, trying to calm Emma down a little, because Emma felt great sadness about what had happened. Emma looked at Zara more closely, seeing her for the first time. There was something about this woman that didn't fit Derek's story. Her calmness, her expensive phone, her attitude despite being seated in the worst seat on the plane. Do you mind if I ask? Emma said carefully. What do you do? I mean, what's your profession? Zara smiled mysteriously. I solve problems, big-scale problems, infrastructure, logistics, data management. She glanced at the kitchen. Systems that look perfect on the surface, but have fundamental flaws in their operation. Before Emma could ask more questions, Zara's phone vibrated with an incoming call. The screen read, Foster, David, Operations Manager, Apex Aviation. Zara answered in a professional, clear voice. Zara Mitchell. Emma's breath caught. She knew that name. Everyone in tech and business knew that name. Miss Mitchell, David Foster's concerned voice came through. We've received a black code alert. Are you safe? The biometric data from your device shows high stress levels and, he continued. I'm perfectly safe, David, Zara calmly interrupted, at least physically, but I'm currently sitting in the crew seat of my own plane because your captain thought I looked too poor to fly first class. There was absolute, devastating silence on the other end of the line. What? David's voice had grown very quiet, the kind of silence heard before volcanic eruptions. Captain Derek Lawson, Zara continued in a conversational tone, told me I had trespassed on private property, threatened me with national security and the no-fly list, and ordered me to sit in the jump seat so I wouldn't spoil the aesthetics for paying passengers. Emma had gone completely pale, covering her mouth with her hand. Miss Mitchell, David said, and Zara could hear him banging on the keyboard in anger in the background. I reviewed the passenger list update that came in at 5:47 p.m. local time. Your name is clearly on the list. It was marked as priority. How could? She didn't check, Zara said simply. She saw a hooded black woman and made her decision based on that. No verification, no protocol, just prejudice. I'm looking at Captain Lawson's personnel file right now, David said, his voice trembling with barely controlled anger. 20 years of service, an exemplary record, not a single complaint. How is that possible if he continued. What if he did this to other passengers who couldn't fight back? Zara finished. Ask yourself, David, how many complaints from people he considered insignificant would have made it into his file? The implication hung in the air like a guillotine blade. What do you want me to do? David asked. Zara looked at the closed curtain, where she could hear Ashley's shrill laughter and Derek's fawning responses. Don't do anything yet, Zara said. I want to see how this plays out. But David, prepare Captain Lawson's termination papers and pull the passenger satisfaction data for all his flights over the last 5 years. I want to know if there's a pattern we've missed, she replied. Zara was actually aware of everything, but she thought that by looking at past documents, she might find more information and evidence. Yes, ma'am, David said immediately. And Miss Mitchell? I'm very sorry about this incident. It's unforgivable. It's a lesson, Zara corrected. That's exactly why I bought Apex. I knew there were systemic problems. I just didn't expect to experience it personally so soon, she said. She hung up the phone and looked at Emma, who was staring at her in awe. You're Zara Mitchell, Emma whispered. That's Zara Mitchell. You founded Mitchell Tech Solutions. You have a fortune worth billions of dollars. And you just bought... Emma's eyes grew even wider. Oh my God, you just bought Apex. That plane is yours. The whole company is yours. Yes, Zara confirmed. and Captain Lawson just— Emma couldn't finish the sentence. The magnitude of Derek's mistake was too great to put into words. Yes, Zara said with a slight smile. He did. Emma looked at the curtain, then back at Zara. What are you going to do? She asked. Zara's smile grew colder. I'll let him finish what he started. Then I'll teach him exactly what happens when you judge people by their clothes instead of their character. In the cockpit, as Lucas Chen monitored the flight systems, a light flashed on the satellite phone console, indicating a priority call. He frowned. Priority calls during flight were rare, usually reserved for mechanical emergencies or urgent weather updates. Captain, Lucas called out toward the main cabin. There's a priority call from the operations center, he said. Derek, slightly irritated from being interrupted during his customer relations work, returned to the cockpit. He picked up the receiver. Captain Lawson. Derek, this is David Foster. Derek sat up slightly. The operations director rarely called during a flight. David, what's the situation? He asked. But a chill ran down his spine. I need you to confirm the passenger manifest for your current flight, David said, his voice carrying a sharpness Derek couldn't quite place. A simple list, Derek replied. Ashley Hartford and her assistant. Also a stowaway we dealt with during takeoff. A stowaway, David repeated, his voice dangerously flat. Yes, a woman in civilian clothes tried to board the plane. She had no ID, was clearly confused. To prevent a confrontation, I sat her in the jump seat and secured her. I'll write a full incident report when we land, he said. Derek, David said, his voice trembling. Did you check the digital passenger list update that came in at 1747? He asked again. I was finishing pre-flight preparations, Derek said, his voice beginning to show irritation. I checked the original manifest. Hartford and his assistant, 2 passengers. The update added a 3rd passenger, David said. Priority assignment, owner access credentials. Derek felt the first cold finger of suspicion run down his spine. Owner access? That's impossible. Mr. Hendricks sold the company 3 days ago. We don't even know who the new owner is, he replied. Her name is Zara Mitchell, David cut him off. Founder and CEO of Mitchell Tech Solutions. Net worth, $3.8 billion. She acquired Apex Aviation in a private transaction 72 hours ago. And Derek? David's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. He's sitting in the ejection seat of his own plane right now, because you decided he looked too poor to fly first class. Hearing this shocking truth, Derek felt like his world had come crashing down. He had risked his entire career. His whole life flashed before his eyes like a movie reel. Derek's hand began to tremble as he held the satellite phone. This is impossible, he stammered. He was wearing a hooded garment. His appearance, he continued. What did he look like, Derek? David's voice spoke with a scalpel-sharp tone. Like someone who doesn't deserve basic respect? Like someone whose existence you must verify before believing they belong anywhere? He asked. Derek's mind rapidly scanned the conflict backwards. The woman's calm demeanor, her suggestion to check the passenger list, her dismissal of the intelligence in his eyes as insignificant. God. David, I didn't know. You didn't verify, David corrected. You made an assumption based on appearance and acted on it. You violated all our protocols. What about Derek? David's voice turned cold. Miss Mitchell issued a code black danger signal 20 minutes ago. She logged it as hostile crew behavior and security concern. Do you understand what that means? He asked bluntly. Derek understood. A captain issuing code black was the harshest measure. It meant an immediate investigation, potential FAA intervention, and career-ending consequences. I need to apologize, Derek said, his voice trembling. You're staying in the cockpit until we figure out how to resolve this, David ordered. Don't approach Miss Mitchell. Don't talk to the passengers. Lucas can handle the flight. You sit there and think about what you did. The line went dead. Derek froze in the captain's seat, his hands shaking, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Lucas looked at him anxiously. Captain, what happened? He asked. Derek couldn't speak. He could only stare at the closed cockpit door, behind which sat the woman he had treated like trash. Yes, she was his boss. The woman who owned every rivet of this $73 million plane. The woman who could end his career with a single phone call. And she had sent him to sit in the ejection seat. Behind the curtain, Zara's phone vibrated with a message from David. Lawson has been informed. He won't approach you. Lucas Chen will fly the plane. What are your instructions? She asked. Zara replied calmly, let him grieve. I'll deal with both of them when we land. And David? Keep someone waiting at Luton. I think Captain Lawson will want to fly home on a different flight. She pressed send and leaned back against the uncomfortable ejection seat. The engines hummed steadily. Ashley Hartford's laughter echoed from the main cabin. Derek Lawson sat in the cockpit, realizing that the next 5 hours would be the longest hours of his life. Because Zara had learned long ago that karma was most effective when it had time to brew, the remaining hours of the flight turned into a lesson in psychological torture. Derek Lawson sat in the captain's seat, ostensibly watching Lucas Chen operate the instruments with consummate skill, but in reality experiencing what could only be described as a slow-motion professional death spiral. Every few minutes he glanced at the closed cockpit door behind him, where the woman he despised sat, the woman who owned the plane, the woman who could end not just this flight but his entire career with a single phone call. His hands, usually steady on the controls after 20 years of flying, trembled slightly as he reached for his coffee. The cup hit the center console. Lucas noticed this but said nothing. The young co-pilot had received his own briefing from operations, a brief message stating that the captain had made a significant error in passenger relations and that Lucas was now in command for the remainder of the flight. During the flight, the humiliation of being demoted, even if unofficially, was almost unbearable for Derek. "Would you want to be Derek, Captain?" Lucas said softly, breaking the heavy silence. "Maybe you should get some rest. I'm in control of the plane," he said. Derek let out a harsh, humorless laugh. "Rest? While my career goes to hell at 45,000 feet? I don't think so," he replied. Lucas turned his attention back to the instruments and wisely chose silence. In the main cabin, Ashley Hartford was unaware of the drama unfolding. She had spent the last 2 hours posting Instagram stories, complaining about the weird atmosphere on the flight, and drinking sparkling cider which Emma had quietly begun to dilute with mineral water. She sat as if nothing mattered. "Emma," Ashley called out in the authoritative tone of someone who had never been told no in her life, "my glass is empty again. Could you turn up the heat a little? It's too cold in here," she asked. Emma emerged from behind the curtain, her professional smile intact despite her awareness of the chaos. "Right away, Mrs. Hartford. However, the cabin temperature has been set to your requested 68 degrees. But it feels like 65 degrees, Ashley complained. "And bring me some of those chocolate truffles, not the Swiss ones, the Belgian ones. I can tell the difference," she replied. "Of course," Emma said, and retreated to the kitchen. Behind the curtain, Zara was reviewing Mitchell Tech Solutions' quarterly earnings reports on her prototype tablet, as if she were sitting in a first-class suite rather than a crew seat designed for short-term emergencies. Emma approached quietly. "Miss Mitchell, can I get you anything? Water? Food? I can bring something from dinner. Grilled salmon? And no need, Emma," said Zara, without looking up from her screen. "But thank you for your thoughtfulness. You're the only one in this crew who treats me like a human being." Emma blushed at the compliment. "I was just, how Captain Lawson," she stopped herself, realizing she was criticizing him. "That you can judge someone so quickly?" Zara finished the sentence. "It's easier than you think, Emma. We all make snap judgments. The real question is whether we allow those judgments to overshadow the facts, the protocol, and basic courtesy." She finally looked up, her dark eyes thoughtful. Derek Lawson saw a black woman in casual clothes and constructed a story in his mind. Stowaway, cleaning crew, someone who didn't belong here. Even when evidence suggested otherwise, he never questioned that story. "It's not just wrong," Emma said quietly. "It's dangerous. In aviation, assumptions kill people." "Exactly," said Zara. "That's why this isn't just a matter of hurt feelings or wounded pride. It's a matter of fundamental competence. A pilot who doesn't bother to verify the manifest because he's busy making assumptions about people's values? That's a safety hazard." The sound of a message coming in on Zara's tablet was heard. She glanced at the screen and allowed herself a small, cold smile. "What is it?" Emma asked. "David Foster just sent Captain Lawson's performance history," Zara said, scrolling through the data. 20 years of exemplary service. "But look at this." She turned the tablet so Emma could see. "Passenger satisfaction scores, broken down by demographic group." Emma leaned in, her eyes widening as she studied the statistics. White passengers, 94% satisfaction rate. Hispanic passengers, 71% satisfaction rate. Asian passengers, 88% satisfaction rate. That's a huge difference," Emma said. "A 27-point gap between white and black passengers," Zara confirmed. "Over 5 years, a consistent trend, and yet it never prompted an investigation." "Why?" asked Emma. "Because those analyzing the data probably assumed that minority passengers were harder to please," said Zara, her voice hardening. "They never questioned whether the service itself was discriminatory. They blamed the passengers, not the crew." She closed the tablet decisively. "That ends now." 3 hours into the flight, Derek could no longer stand the confines of the cockpit. Against David Foster's explicit orders, he unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up. "Captain?" asked Lucas, concern in his voice. "I must apologize," said Derek, his voice hardening. "I have to fix this before we land." "Sir, Operation said." "I don't care what Operation said," Derek shouted. "My career is on the line. I'm not going to sit here and watch it go down without trying to save it." Before Lucas could protest further, Derek opened the cockpit door and entered the cabin. "Is there a problem with the plane?" "Everything's fine, Miss Hartford," Derek said, his voice tense. Please excuse me. Her heart pounding, she walked toward the galley curtain. She pulled it aside. Zara was sitting where she had left her, in the hard jump seat, tablet in her lap. Emma was standing nearby, organizing the beverage cart. Both women turned to look at her. Zara's expression was completely neutral, which made her seem even more frightening than if she had been visibly angry. Miss Mitchell, Derek began, his voice trembling as he said her name. He cleared his throat. Can I talk to you? You are talking to me right now, Zara said calmly. Derek stepped into the kitchen, acutely aware of how cramped it was, how close the walls were. I got a call from operations. I learned there was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Zara repeated, her tone flat. Is that what we're calling it? I made a terrible mistake, Derek said, his words pouring out. I should have verified the manifesto. I should have checked the ID. You should have treated me like a human being, regardless of what I was wearing. Zara cut him off, her voice quiet but sharp. Verification is secondary, Captain Lawson. The real issue is that you looked at me and decided I was worthless. Not worth your time, not deserving of basic courtesy. No question about it. Derek flinched as if Zara had struck him. It wasn't like that. It was, Zara said, standing up. Even in the cramped kitchen area, she commanded the room. Let me ask you something, Captain. If I were a hooded white woman, would you have seen me as part of the cleaning crew? Would you have threatened me with the Department of Homeland Security? Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. The honest answer was no, and they both knew it. That's what I thought, said Zara. Please, said Derek, his voice now tinged with genuine desperation. I've worked for this company for 20 years. I have a family. I have a mortgage. I'm 2 years away from retirement. I beg you, give me a chance to make this right. Zara studied him for a long moment, her dark eyes unreadable. A chance to fix it, she thought. That's interesting, Captain. Because you didn't give me that chance, did you? You refused when I asked you to check the manifest. You called me a liar when I said I belonged on this plane. She took another step closer. You had many opportunities to correct your mistake, but your ego wouldn't allow it. You were so certain that someone like me couldn't belong in first class, that you ignored all the evidence to the contrary. Derek's face paled. I understand. I really do. And I'm sorry. Sincerely, deeply sorry. Are you apologizing for what you did? Zara asked, or for getting caught? The question hung in the air like a knife. Before Derek could answer, Ashley's voice broke the tension. Excuse me, what's going on in there? Why is the captain chatting with the crew instead of flying the plane? Derek closed his eyes in despair. Ashley's comment, filled with the same condescension he had shown, was a perfect example of why this couldn't be swept under the rug. Zara walked past Derek, pulled the curtain completely open, and entered the main cabin. Ashley looked up from her phone, her anger replaced by surprise. What are you doing? Get back to your little timeout corner. Actually, said Zara, with a new authority in her voice that made Ashley narrow her eyes, I think it's time we talked about who this plane belongs to. It belongs to Apex Aviation, Ashley said, with exaggerated patience as if explaining to a child. My dad charters it privately. Your dad charters it, Zara corrected, from a company called Apex Aviation. Do you know who owns Apex, Ashley? Ashley shrugged warily. I think it's some tech guy from Silicon Valley. They sold it a few days ago. Right, Zara confirmed. To me. Then there was complete silence. Ashley blinked slowly, her brain processing information it didn't want to accept. What? My name is Zara Mitchell, Zara said clearly. I founded Mitchell Tech Solutions. 72 hours ago, I bought Apex Aviation. This plane, she gestured to the luxurious cabin, is mine. The seat you're sitting in is mine. The company Captain Lawson works for is mine. Ashley's mouth opened and closed silently, like a fish out of water. Derek stood in the kitchen doorway, watching his career come to a real-time end. You're lying, Ashley finally said. What do you look like? Zara asked, her voice dangerously soft. Please finish the sentence, Ashley. I'm very curious to know what you think billionaires should look like. Ashley searched for her phone with trembling hands, her long acrylic nails tapping frantically on the screen. She typed, Zara Mitchell, Mitchell Tech. The results loaded instantly via the plane's high-speed satellite internet. Zara Mitchell, tech mogul and infrastructure pioneer. Mitchell Tech Solutions acquired Apex Aviation in an $840 million deal. Net worth $3.8 billion. In the image at the top of the search results, Zara appeared wearing a sharp ivory suit, giving a speech at a technology conference. Her hair was neat and professional, but her eyes, those sharp, uncompromising eyes, were undoubtedly the same. Ashley's phone slipped from her fingers and fell onto the spotless carpet. Oh my God, she whispered, her face draining. Zara calmly walked over to the club chair, the chair Ashley had kicked her out of, and sat down. She crossed her legs with deliberate grace. Well, Ashley, Zara said conversationally, were you talking about poverty? Filth? Please continue. Your assessment of my net worth has deeply affected me. Ashley looked sick. What difference would it have made? Zara asked. Would you still have been cruel to someone you looked down on? Ashley couldn't answer. She looked helplessly at Derek, searching for an ally, but the captain was staring at the floor, devastated. Zara pulled out her prototype phone and made a call. It connected immediately. "David," she said, "I want you to do something for me. Whatever you wish, Miss Mitchell. Contact Edward Hartford from Hartford Media Group. Tell him that due to his daughter's behavior during today's flight, we will be renegotiating the data infrastructure contracts. I think a 15% increase would be appropriate." Derek looked up. "Miss Mitchell, please." Zara raised a finger to silence him. "Also," she continued to David, "I want you to look into Captain Lawson's background. Pull all complaints, all incident reports, all passenger satisfaction surveys from the last 5 years. I want a complete picture of his performance." "I already have," said David. "I'll email you the summary." "Excellent," said Zara. "And David, prepare 2 things. First, Captain Lawson's termination papers. Second, Lucas Chen's promotion package. I think he's ready for the left seat." "Yes, ma'am." Zara ended the call and looked at Derek, who was as white as a ghost. "Miss Mitchell," Derek said in a hoarse voice, "please, there's a jump seat in the galley, Captain," Zara said, her voice cold and firm. "I assume you know it. I suggest you sit there for the remainder of the flight. Lucas will handle the landing." Derek's eyes widened in horror. "For me, I want you to experience what you did to me," said Zara. "Sit in that uncomfortable seat. Turn to face the wall. Think about the career you ruined by not bothering to show basic respect to a human being." Her voice turned to a deadly whisper. "And Captain, if you get up from that seat without permission, I personally guarantee you'll never fly anything bigger than a paper airplane again. I'll contact the FAA. I will contact the aviation unions. I will make a case study of how prejudice ruined careers." Derek's shoulders slumped in complete defeat. He turned, entered the kitchen, and lowered the jump seat. He sat down heavily, his knees hitting the partition wall, the engine noise surrounding him. From the main cabin he could hear Zara's calm conversational voice. "Emma, we were told there would be grilled salmon for dinner, right?" "Yes, Mrs. Mitchell." Emma's voice barely concealed her triumph. "Great, I'll take that. Emma, open the sparkling apple wine Mrs. Hartford is drinking. I want to see what enough tastes like." Derek closed his eyes, his reflection in the stainless steel coffee machine showing a broken man in an expensive uniform. Behind him, Ashley Hartford sat frozen in shock, her phone ringing incessantly with angry calls from her father, and Zara Mitchell, said not to belong in the sky, sat in the captain's chair, preparing to enjoy her dinner. The scales were balancing, and they had 3 more hours to fall. The last 2 hours of the flight were like a lesson in sharp contrasts, the kind that could be used in a psychology textbook on power dynamics and their consequences. In the main cabin, Zara Mitchell sat in the cream-colored leather seat Derek was trying so hard not to give her, working methodically on her tablet, while Emma served her a $200 dinner from a Michelin-starred restaurant. The pan-seared salmon was perfectly prepared, the asparagus still had a delicate crispness, and the sparkling apple wine Ashley deemed adequate turned out to be a $300 bottle of premium French imported wine. "This is extraordinary," Zara said to Emma, who was smiling proudly. "Thank you, Miss Mitchell. Chef Rousseau personally prepared the menu." Meanwhile, in the cramped kitchen, Derek Lawson sat on a jump seat facing the stainless steel partition, enduring an experience that could be described as physical and psychological torture. The seat was designed only for emergencies. It was hard, narrow, and positioned at an angle that made comfortable sitting impossible. His back screamed in agony. His legs had gone numb 20 minutes ago. But the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the mental anguish. Every sound from the main cabin was torture. Zara's calm voice as she discussed business with David Foster via satellite phone, Emma's respectful responses, the clinking of crystal and porcelain. The life she had so casually rejected had now become a life she observed from the position it had reduced her to, that of a servant. On the other side of the corridor in the main cabin, Ashley Hartford was experiencing her own personal apocalypse. The phone wouldn't stop ringing. After her father's 15th call, she finally answered, and the conversation was brief and devastating. "Do you realize what you've done?" Edward Hartford's voice boomed so loudly through the speaker that Zara heard every word from the other end of the cabin. "Zara Mitchell controls 60% of the cloud infrastructure powering my entire media empire. She sent me a contract amendment that increases our annual costs by $4.2 million. Dad, I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't bother to find out. You judged someone by their clothes, and now we're paying the price. When the plane lands, you're flying back to New York on the first commercial flight. Economy class. Middle seat. And Ashley, your credit cards are canceled. Your allowance is suspended. You think you understand the value of money? Then you can start by earning it yourself." The phone clicked firmly shut and Ashley stared at it in horror. She had tried to salvage something, anything, from this situation. With trembling hands and mascara running down her cheeks, she approached Zara. "Miss Mitchell, Ashley whispered, her previous arrogance completely gone. She couldn't finish her sentence and broke down in real tears. Zara looked at her with an expression that was neither cruel nor kind, just appraising. Ashley, Zara said quietly, you don't need to apologize. I want you to learn something. Throughout the flight, you treated people as if their worth was determined by their appearance and bank accounts. You were cruel to someone you thought you couldn't stand up to. Ashley nodded sadly. The lesson here isn't be nice to people who might be rich, Zara continued. The lesson is to be nice to everyone because human dignity isn't tied to net worth. Do you understand the difference? I think I understand, Ashley whispered. Good, said Zara. Then maybe something useful will come out of this disaster you created. With less than an hour left in the flight, the Bombardier Global 7500 began its descent into London Luton Airport. As Lucas Chen lowered the aircraft from cruising altitude, the engine slowed slightly and the nose dipped a little. Lucas's voice came over the intercom, professional and clear. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now descending to London Luton. We will be touching down in approximately 45 minutes. The current weather is cloudy with light rain, and the temperature is 12 degrees Celsius. In the galley, Derek finally dared to stand up. His legs were almost giving out from being motionless for hours. He held onto the counter for support, his face looking exhausted. He looked at his reflection in the shiny chrome surface of the espresso machine, the wrinkled uniform, the defeated posture, the gold captain's stripes on his shoulders that would soon be removed, a 20-year career, 2 years left until retirement, a comfortable pension. All of it gone, because he had looked at a hooded woman and decided she wasn't worth his time. The magnitude of his mistake wasn't just that he hadn't verified. It was callous cruelty. It was arrogance. It was assuming he had the right to judge people's worth based on their appearance. Emma appeared in the galley doorway. Captain Lawson, she said quietly, using his title now more out of habit than respect. Mrs. Mitchell requested that you remain in the galley until the plane is completely cleared. Derek nodded numbly. Understood. Emma hesitated, then added softly, whatever happens, Captain, I hope you learn from this. Derek looked at her, this young woman who had witnessed his fall, who had every right to take pleasure in his misfortune, but had instead chosen to show compassion. I already have, he said in a hoarse voice. I just learned it too late. The landing was flawless. Lucas made such a soft touchdown that there was almost no jolt when the main landing gear touched the wet runway. The thrust reversers engaged with their characteristic roar, and the massive aircraft slowed gently. As they taxied toward the private terminal, Zara could see from the window that this was no standard arrival. 3 black Range Rovers were waiting on the tarmac. David Foster stood beside the lead vehicle with 2 people Zara recognized. These individuals were members of the Apex Aviation executive team who had flown in earlier to greet her. But there was another group, paparazzi photographers, their long lenses visible even from the taxiing aircraft. Emma, Zara called out. Why are there photographers? Emma checked her phone, then frowned. Ms. Mitchell, you're trending. Someone from the ground crew at Teterboro shared the conflict. Aviation blogs and business news picked it up. #HoodieGate. Zara sighed. Too much for a quiet arrival. The plane came to a complete stop. Lucas methodically completed the shutdown checklist, then exited the cockpit with a look that was both tense and professional. Ms. Mitchell, he said respectfully, I want to apologize on behalf of the crew. Zara raised her hand to stop him. Lucas, you didn't do anything wrong. In fact, you did everything right. When operations put you in command, you flew this plane perfectly. That's exactly the professionalism I expect from my pilots. Lucas's face flushed with relief and pride. Thank you, ma'am. We'll talk more when I get back to America, Zara said. I have some ideas I think you'll find interesting regarding your career. She stood up, picked up the canvas bag Ashley had mocked hours earlier, and walked toward the plane door. Ashley remained in her seat, looking small and defeated, her designer trench coat wrapped around her like inadequate armor. Miss Hartford, Zara said, standing beside her, your car is waiting. I suggest you answer your father's calls. You have a lot of apologizing to do. Ashley shook her head unhappily. Now, what happens now? Now you will find out whether you have the ability to grow or only the ability to feel regret, said Zara. The choice is yours. The aircraft door opened with a hydraulic hiss. The stairs automatically extended, and London's cool air, carrying the scent of rain and jet fuel, flooded the cabin. Zara descended the stairs with the same calm grace she had shown throughout this difficult process. Cameras flashed, but she ignored them and walked straight towards David Foster. David, she said, shaking his hand firmly. Thank you for taking care of this. Miss Mitchell, I can't apologize enough. The apology I need, Zara cut him off, is not from you. It's from the system that allowed this to happen. We have work to do. She turned to look at the plane. Derek was finally emerging, his uniform rumpled, his captain's hat missing, his whole demeanor defeated. He slowly descended the stairs, each step seeming to cost him dearly. Below, David Foster was waiting with a thin file. "Captain Lawson," David said in a formal voice, his voice carrying across the tarmac. "I need you to hand over your company ID, your security credentials, and your aircraft authorization cards." Derek's hand trembled as he reached for his wallet. He pulled out the plastic cards that had defined his professional identity for 20 years and handed them over. "Your dismissal takes effect immediately," David continued. "You will receive severance pay as specified in your contract, but your flight privileges with Apex Aviation are permanently revoked." "I understand," Derek said, his voice barely audible. "There's a commercial flight to New York in 3 hours," David added, a deliberate cruelty in his voice. "We've arranged a ticket for you, economy class, middle seat. I think this will be educational for you." Derek closed his eyes. Cosmic justice was almost poetic. Zara stepped forward. "Captain Lawson." Derek looked at her, and for a moment, genuine regret flashed in his eyes. "Miss Mitchell, I'm not interested in your apologies," Zara said, not harshly. "What I'm interested in is whether you understand why this happened." Derek swallowed hard. "I judged you by your appearance. I made assumptions instead of verifying the facts. I let my prejudices override my professional obligations." "And?" Zara asked. "And I've probably been doing this for years without realizing it," Derek confessed, his words clearly painful. "When I looked at my performance data, at satisfaction scores broken down by demographics, I saw a pattern. I just never questioned it." Zara nodded slowly. "This is the first step toward real growth, Captain. Recognizing the problem. What you do with that awareness is up to you." She turned to David. "Make sure Captain Lawson's personnel file states the real reason for his dismissal, not performance issues, not restructuring. The truth, discrimination, and failure to follow protocol. If he applies to fly elsewhere, they need to know that." Derek flinched but didn't argue. He knew he deserved it. As Derek walked toward the terminal, shoulders slumped, his expensive uniform looking cheap under the harsh runway lights, Zara felt no particular sense of triumph. Just the satisfaction of a problem solved, a system corrected. Ashley stepped out of the plane, her pink trench coat now looking garish and ridiculous under the gray London sky. She saw the photographers and instinctively tried to hide her face, but it was too late. The cameras flashed, capturing her tear-streaked makeup and disheveled appearance. Tomorrow, these images would be everywhere. Influencer, humbled, hoodie gate, karma, at altitude. One of David's assistants approached Ashley. "Miss Hartford, your father has arranged your ground transportation. Your commercial flight departs in 90 minutes. "Commercial," Ashley repeated weakly. "Yes, ma'am. British Airways, Economy Plus, seat 38E. Ashley's face crumpled, but she didn't protest. She simply walked toward the waiting car, her designer heels clicking on the wet asphalt. Zara turned to David and the management team. "Gentlemen, I want a full operational review of Apex Aviation by the end of the week. I want to know how many Captain Lawsons we have in our system. I want passenger satisfaction data compared to crew performance. And I want a new training protocol implemented company-wide." "Yes, ma'am," David said immediately. "We've already started preliminary work." "Good," Zara said. "Also, I want Lucas Chen's promotion to captain expedited, and I'm bringing Emma Rodriguez into our training department. She showed more integrity in one flight than some show in their entire careers." She pulled out her prototype phone, which was vibrating with incoming messages. The business world had noticed her arrival, and her calendar was already filling up with meeting requests. "One more thing," Zara said. "Prepare a press release. Apex Aviation is implementing the industry's first mandatory anti-discrimination training for the entire flight crew. We are also establishing an independent passenger rights advocacy office. Anyone who feels they have been treated unfairly will be able to report directly to a team that is independent of operations." David was frantically taking notes. "The industry will follow your lead on this." "That's the goal," said Zara. "We have an opportunity to change the way private aviation operates. Let's not waste it." As he walked toward the waiting Range Rover, he passed a mirror-like puddle on the tarmac. For a moment, he saw the reflection. The hooded woman said not to belong to the sky. He smiled, because she didn't just belong to the sky. She owned the sky. The car door closed with a solid thud, leaving the noise and rain outside. As the Range Rover pulled away from the plane, Zara looked back one last time. Derek was visible through the terminal windows, waiting in line for security, preparing to experience commercial aviation from the perspective of the passengers he had been looking down on for decades. Ashley was in another car, already staring at her phone, probably reading about the storm her behavior had created on social media. And the Bombardier Global 7500, her plane, gleamed on the runway, a $73 million reminder that power, real power, doesn't announce itself. It simply exists, silent, patient, and utterly unforgiving when challenged. "Where to, Miss Mitchell?" asked the driver. "The Shard," said Zara, opening her laptop. "I have a board meeting in 90 minutes. We have work to do." As London's skyline came into view, Zara opened a new document and began typing. Memo, Apex Aviation Culture Reform Initiative. From Zara Mitchell, owner and CEO. Subject: respect as standard, not luxury. The words flowed easily. Because this wasn't about revenge, it was about ensuring that the next hooded person boarding the private jet would be judged by their ticket, not their appearance. The next black woman sitting in first class would be met with respect, not suspicion. The next employee who demonstrated integrity would not be silenced, they would be promoted. Karma had balanced the scales at 45,000 feet. But lasting change happened on the ground, and Zara Mitchell was just getting started. 6 months after the aviation industry dubbed it the hooded incident, the world of private aviation had changed fundamentally. Zara Mitchell stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office on the 47th floor of Mitchell Tech Solutions' Manhattan headquarters, watching the city move ceaselessly below. The late afternoon sun painted the horizon in amber and gold tones, and somewhere out there, 30,000 feet above the ground, the fleet of aircraft carried passengers who could now be certain of one thing: prestige. Her assistant knocked lightly on the open door. "Miss Mitchell? The Apex Aviation Quarterly Review team is here. Send them in," said Zara, turning away from the window. David Foster entered first, followed by 3 other executives, among whom was a face that would surprise everyone who had witnessed the events of that fateful transatlantic flight: Emma Rodriguez. Emma was no longer wearing her flight attendant uniform. She was dressed in a tailored business suit and carried a tablet loaded with data. Her new title was Director of Passenger Experience and Equity Compliance. Zara had created this position specifically to ensure that what had happened to her never happened to anyone else. "Miss Mitchell," David began, placing his briefcase on the conference table, "I'm pleased to report that the Cultural Reform Initiative has exceeded all of our criteria." He opened a presentation on the big screen. 6 months after implementation, our passenger satisfaction scores have increased across all demographic groups. The gap between white and minority passengers narrowed from 27 points to 4 points, and we are working to eliminate the remaining gap entirely. Zara nodded as she reviewed the data. "What about complaints?" Emma stepped forward. "We received 347 complaints through the new independent ombudsman office. Each was investigated. 43 resulted in crew retraining. 12 resulted in dismissals. 12 more Derek Lawsons," Zara commented. "More or less," Emma confirmed. "But none were as striking as this. Most were subtle: microaggressions, differing service standards, assumptions about who belongs in premium cabins, the kind of behavior passengers might not report because they're conditioned to accept it, and now they don't have to report it," Zara said. David moved to the next slide. "Mandatory anti-discrimination training has been completed by 100% of active crew. We've also implemented a requirement for recertification every 3 months. Flight crew are now evaluated not just on technical competence, but also on equality standards." "How was that received?" Zara asked. "Mixed reactions," David admitted. "Some crew members welcomed it. Others didn't like the extra scrutiny. A few who preferred the old system left voluntarily." "Good," Zara said plainly. "If they can't treat passengers with basic respect, I'd rather they work somewhere else." She turned to the financial data. "So what's the impact on the business?" A triumphant look appeared on David's face. "Our revenue is up 23% over last year. We've signed contracts with 4 Fortune 500 companies that cite our equality initiatives as a deciding factor. Apparently, corporate customers are placing increasing importance on diversity and inclusion. Flying with an airline that publicly commits to equal treatment is very valuable to them. So doing the right thing is also profitable," Zara said with a slight smile. "Just think about it." Emma opened another section of the presentation. "We also tracked the media impact. The Hoodie Gate incident generated over 200 million impressions on social media. But more importantly, it sparked industry-wide discussions about discrimination in luxury travel." She clicked on a news montage. Major airlines announcing new training programs, private aviation companies updating their policies, industry conferences dedicated to equality in travel. "You changed the industry," Emma said quietly. "One flight at a time." Zara nodded. "I just exposed what was already broken. The industry changed itself. It just needed a catalyst." "By the way," David said, "there's new information about the people involved in the original incident." He opened a file. Derek Lawson. After being fired from Apex, he applied to 17 different aviation companies. All of them rejected him after reviewing his personnel file, and the reason for his dismissal. "Is he still flying?" Zara asked. "Yes, actually," said David. "He's working as a flight instructor at a small aviation school in Arizona. He teaches student pilots. According to his supervisor there, he's become a humble person. Apparently he uses his own story as a cautionary example in his lessons." Zara thought about this. "Good. If he has truly learned from his mistakes and is passing those lessons on to others, then something useful has come out of this incident. Should we remove the dismissal notation from his records? David asked. Will we allow him to work commercially again? Zara was silent for a moment. No. The outcome remains the same. But if her current employer contacts us for a reference, we can be honest. She made a catastrophic decision error, faced appropriate consequences, and seems genuinely reformed. What happens next is up to them. David nodded and took notes. Ashley Hartford. Emma opened a tabloid-style article on the screen, but its content was more meaningful than the headline implied. From influencer to advocate. Ashley Hartford's redemption story. After the incident went viral, Emma explained, Ashley initially lost about 200,000 followers. Her father cut off his financial support as promised. But something interesting happened. She clicked through a few social media posts. Ashley was volunteering at a homeless shelter, wearing far fewer designer clothes than before. Ashley was speaking at a university about privilege and unconscious bias. Ashley was working at her father's media company, not in a managerial position, but in the mailroom. She's rebuilding her image, Emma continued, but it seems sincere. She's publicly acknowledged her mistakes, her entitled behavior, and the need to question our assumptions about people. Zara raised her eyebrows. Is this genuine progress, or just PR? Time will tell, David said. But last month, her father reached out to us. He wants to restore his contracts at the original rates. He also included a personal letter, apologizing for his daughter's behavior and praising our reforms. What did you tell him? Zara asked. We said we'd think about it, David replied, but to remind him that actions have consequences. The 15% increase will remain in effect for another year. Zara smiled. Perfect. Emma opened another file. Lucas Chen, promoted to captain per your orders, now flies the London route regularly. His passenger satisfaction scores consistently above 98%. He earned it, said Zara. What about the composition of his crew? We paired him with the new chief flight attendant replacing Emma, a young man named Marcus Thompson. African-American, excellent service record, and someone who deeply appreciates the cultural reforms. David opened the last slide. This brings us to our flagship initiative, the Equal Skies Project. Zara leaned forward with interest. This was the personal project that had captured her full attention for the past 6 months. The Equal Sky Project was a collaboration between Apex Aviation and a number of civil rights organizations. The program provided subsidized private aviation access to minority professionals, activists, and community leaders who could benefit from the speed and efficiency of private travel but couldn't afford the astronomical costs. We've completed 12 flights under the program, David reported. Civil rights lawyers heading to urgent court cases, community organizers reaching disaster zones, medical professionals delivering critical supplies to underserved areas. Emma showed references and photos. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Most of these passengers had never flown on a private jet before. They were treated with the same respect and service as our highest-paying clients. Because they deserve it, Zara said simply. Access to efficient travel shouldn't be determined solely by wealth. Sometimes the people who need it most can't afford it. She stood up and returned to the window. The incident on that flight wasn't just about disrespect towards me. It was a symptom of a larger problem. We've built systems that equate value with wealth, that assume appearance demonstrates worth. Zara turned to her team. I want Apex to be the company that breaks this mold. Yes, I want us to be profitable. But I also want us to be proof that we can run a successful business while showing respect to every human being. David and Emma looked at each other, then nodded. We're with you, David said. A soft ringtone from Zara's phone interrupted the moment. She looked at the screen and responded with a rare, sincere smile. Guys, Emma, I need to catch my flight. We'll continue next week. Where to? David asked. From Teterboro to London, Zara said, gathering her things. Same route as 6 months ago. Now that our reforms are in place, I want to experience it from the passenger's perspective. Emma smiled. Should we tell the crew you're coming? Absolutely not, Zara said. I want to see how they treat a passenger they don't know. That's the real test. An hour later, Zara stood on the tarmac at Teterboro Airport, watching the Bombardier Global 7500 prepare for takeoff. It wasn't the same plane. That one was currently flying a technology executive to Singapore, but it was the same model, gleaming in the afternoon sun. She wore the exact same outfit she had worn 6 months earlier, an oversized gray hoodie, black leggings, worn sneakers, a canvas bag. It was a deliberate choice, a test. As she approached the aircraft stairs, her heartbeat quickened slightly, even though she knew the company owner. Old traumas are not easily forgotten. According to the briefing David had given her, Marcus Thompson, a young flight attendant, greeted her at the door with a warm and friendly smile. Good evening. Welcome aboard. You must be Miss Mitchell? Zara blinked in surprise. Was I announced? No, ma'am, said Marcus. I checked the passenger list. Your name is there, seat 1A. Can I help you with your bag? It was a very simple thing, checking the passenger list, verifying the information, treating passengers with respect, regardless of what they were wearing. Everything Derek should have done but didn't. I'll manage, thank you, said Zara, her voice slightly thick with emotion. She stepped into the cabin. The interior was the same as 6 months ago, cream-colored leather, walnut details, gold-colored accessories, but the atmosphere was completely different. Marcus pointed to the club seat at the front. You're sitting in 1A today, our best seat. Can I offer you anything before takeoff? Sparkling cider, fresh fruit juice, or if you prefer, we have an excellent selection of teas. Sparkling cider would be wonderful, said Zara, settling into the seat she had been forced to leave months ago. While Marcus prepared her drink, Captain Lucas Chen emerged from the cockpit. He saw Zara and his face lit up with recognition and respect. Miss Mitchell, I didn't know you were on today's passenger list. It's an honor to have you aboard. Captain Chen, Zara said warmly, I wanted to see how the reforms work in practice. Please treat me like any other passenger. Don't change your routine. Lucas nodded understandingly. You will receive the same service as everyone else. And I must say, this service is considerably better than it was 6 months ago. The captain returned to the cockpit, and Marcus brought Zara sparkling apple wine in a crystal glass. We'll be taking off in about 20 minutes, Marcus said. Our flight time to London is 5 hours and 40 minutes. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask. As Marcus moved to prepare the cabin, Zara noticed something on the small table beside her seat. It was a laminated card with an elegant design, Apex Aviation Passenger Rights Charter. Every passenger deserves respect, regardless of appearance, background, or perceived status. All security concerns will be taken seriously and investigated immediately. Any form of discrimination will not be tolerated and must be reported immediately. Your comfort and dignity are our highest priority. Below it was a QR code linking to the independent advocacy office Emma had established. Zara ran her fingers over the card and unexpectedly began to feel emotional. This was what she was fighting for. Not revenge against Derek. Not punishment for Ashley. A systemic change that would protect the next passenger, the passenger after that, and the thousands of passengers after that. The Bombardier's engines started up, their powerful hum turning into roar. The plane began taxiing, and Zara looked out the window at Teterboro's familiar runway lights. 6 months ago, she had been humiliated on this very runway. Today, she was flying with an airline that had been fundamentally changed because of that humiliation. As the plane turned and climbed into the sky, Zara thought of Derek Lawson, finishing his lesson with a student pilot in Arizona. Hopefully he had taught him that there was no place for prejudice in the cockpit. She thought of Ashley Hartford, who had learned what it meant to earn respect rather than demand it. She thought of Emma Rodriguez, now tasked with ensuring that honor was standard procedure. And she thought of the thousands of passengers who would fly with Apex Aviation in the years to come. Never knowing that equal treatment had been achieved thanks to one woman's courage to say, "No, this is unacceptable." Lucas's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached our cruising altitude of 45,000 feet. The flight time to London is 5 hours and 30 minutes. On behalf of Apex Aviation, thank you for flying with us today." Zara reclined her seat and finally savored the luxury she had paid for, the luxury denied to her, the luxury now guaranteed to everyone regardless of what they wore. She pulled out her tablet and opened a new document. Mitchell Tech Solutions, next phase, expanding Equal Sky into commercial aviation. Because the job wasn't done, it never would be. But this was progress. And Zara had learned that progress was built each time through an uncomfortable conversation, a reform policy, a change of mind. Bombardier cut through the night sky, taking her to London and whatever challenges awaited her. But this time she flew with the firm belief that when she landed, the industry would be in slightly better shape than when she took off, and sometimes that was enough. The aviation industry's annual leadership conference was held at the Washington Convention Center, attended by executives, regulators, and innovators from around the world. This year's keynote speaker was Zara Mitchell, a figure who was both famous and controversial. On the podium, dressed in a sleek charcoal suit with professionally styled hair, she looked every inch the billionaire CEO the industry had not known 2 years prior. 2 years ago, Zara began, her voice carrying clearly through the packed hall, I boarded a private jet wearing a hooded sweatshirt and sneakers. The captain gave me a look and thought I was part of the cleaning crew. He ordered me to sit in the jump seat, the uncomfortable folding seat used by the crew in emergencies, because I didn't fit his image of how first-class passengers should look. The audience murmured. Most knew this story. What he didn't know, Zara continued, was that I owned the plane he was flying, I owned the company that employed him, I owned the seat he was trying to prevent me from sitting in. She paused to let the audience digest the irony. But this story isn't about revenge or personal vindication. It's about what happened next. Because I had a choice. I could have fired the captain, sued for discrimination, and moved on with my life. Or I could have used that moment to change the entire industry. Zara clicked on a slide showing Apex Aviation's equality metrics. These data had been reviewed by aviation companies worldwide. We chose systemic change, mandatory anti-discrimination training, independent audits, passenger rights advocacy offices, financial consequences for discriminatory behavior, and most importantly, we measured the results. The data was undeniable. Satisfaction scores rose, complaints decreased, revenue increased, employee engagement improved. But the true measure of success, Zara said, is not in the numbers. It's in the fact that passengers who might once have been profiled, denied, or humiliated are now treated with the respect they deserve every day. That is the legacy of an uncomfortable flight. She looked at the audience of aviation leaders. Some of you have implemented similar programs. Others have resisted, arguing it's too expensive or too complicated. Let me tell you this, the cost of discrimination, lawsuits, loss of reputation, and loss of business far exceeds the cost of treating people with respect. Zara moved to her final slide, a photo of that jump seat from the first flight, now displayed at Apex Aviation's training center with a plaque reading, "Where Change Began." This seat represents a choice everyone in aviation makes every day, Zara concluded. Do you judge people by their appearance, or do you verify the facts? Do you determine their worth by their clothing, or do you show respect to everyone? Do you perpetuate exclusionary systems, or do you build inclusive ones? She gripped the edges of the podium tightly. The captain who put me in this seat thought he was protecting his aircraft's prestige. Instead, he exposed a systemic error that cost him his career and changed an industry. My question to you all is this: will you wait for your own crisis to force change, or will you choose to be better starting today? The applause was thunderous. As Zara stepped off the stage, a familiar face approached her. Derek Lawson, looking older but somehow lighter than she remembered. Miss Mitchell, Derek said quietly, I hesitated to come, but I wanted to hear your speech. Zara studied him. How are things in Arizona? Fine, Derek said. Humble, but fine. I'm teaching the next generation of pilots to be better than me. That's all anyone could ask for, Zara said. Derek hesitated, then extended his hand. Thank you for not completely erasing me. You could have. You had every right to. But instead of making me suffer for my mistakes, you gave me a chance to learn from them. Zara shook his hand. I didn't do it for you, Derek. I did it because punishing you wouldn't fix the system that created you. But I'm glad you chose to grow rather than regret. As Derek walked away, Emma came up to Zara. Emma was now Apex's vice president, with a team of 20 people working under her. Are you ready for the next panel? Emma asked. You're going to speak on creating inclusive luxury experiences. Zara smiled. We'll go teach them how it's done. Walking through the convention center, passing aviation executives who now recognize Zara not as the hoodie girl, but as an innovator transforming their industries, Zara felt a deep sense of satisfaction, not because she had won a personal battle, because she had turned a moment of humiliation into a movement for change. The hooded sweatshirt she wore that day now hung in a frame in her office, reminding her that honor is never about appearance. And somewhere, 30,000 feet above the ground on an Apex Aviation flight, a passenger who didn't belong in first class was being served with respect, kindness, and the fundamental human dignity that should never be up for debate. That was the real victory, not revenge. Revolution, one flight at a time,